41 years of being the man everyone leaned on, and the one weekend I leaned on myself. They called it a crisis. My name is Walter Higgins. I'm 71 years old. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, in a house I built with my own hands back when this ridge was mostly pine trees and nobody wanted to drive the extra 15 minutes into town. I spent 38 years as a master electrician, ran my own contracting business for the last 20 of those, wired half the houses on this mountain myself. I drove a Ford pickup for 11 years past the point when the transmission started complaining. My late wife, Ruth, used to say I'd wear a t-shirt until it had more holes than fabric before I'd spend money on myself. What nobody realized, not Ruth, God rest her, not my kids, was that every job I took on the side, every contract I underbid just to keep the crew busy, every dollar I didn't spend on myself went into a retirement account. I started back in 1987 and never once touched. I didn't show it. I let people believe I was just a tired old electrician getting by. But I'd been quietly, patiently, stubbornly building something for 4 decades. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. My 71st birthday landed on a Saturday in late June. My daughter-in-law, Denise, made a pound cake, brought it over with my son Marcus and my daughter Patricia and her husband. Good visit, short visit. The kind where everyone hugs you at the door and you realize the whole thing lasted maybe 35 minutes before somebody had somewhere else to be. That's fine. Everybody's got a life. I understand that better than most. What none of them knew, what I hadn't told a soul, was that 4 days before that birthday, I'd driven 40 minutes to a marina on Lake Norman and put a deposit down on a 31-foot Grady White fishing boat. Diesel engine, twin outboards, cabin big enough to sleep two. I'd been looking at that exact model for 9 years, walking the docks every time I had an excuse to be near the water, never letting myself ask the price out loud. $92,000, paid it outright. No loan, no financing, no monthly note hanging over my head. I drove out to the marina the day it was ready, climbed aboard, sat in the captain's chair for almost 20 minutes before I even started the engine, just sat there, ran my hand along the console, listened to the water slap against the hull, and for the first time in longer than I could tell you, I felt like a man who'd done something for himself, not for the business, not for the kids' college funds, or Marcus's first house down payment, or Patricia's wedding that I paid for outright because her father-in-law made it clear he wasn't contributing a dime. For me, just for me. I should have known that feeling doesn't last long in this family. Welcome, by the way, to whatever this channel of mine turns out to be. If you're listening, drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. I promise you, this story is going somewhere you don't expect. Marcus showed up on a Tuesday morning, 10 days after my birthday, unannounced, the way he does when something's eating at him. I was out back, working on the gutters, when I heard his truck in the driveway. He didn't come around to say hello first. He walked straight down to where I keep the boat trailer parked under the carport, stood there with his hands on his hips, staring at it like it had insulted his mother's memory. I climbed down off the ladder, wiped my hands, walked over. "Morning, son." He didn't turn around right away. "Dad, what is this?" "That's a Grady White, 31-footer. Ain't she a beauty?" "You bought a boat." "I did." "When?" "Couple weeks back. Birthday gift to myself." He turned around slow, and I could see it working behind his eyes before he even said the number. "How much?" I told him straight. 92,000. He made a sound I can only describe as somewhere between a laugh and a cough, like the number had physically caught in his throat. He didn't say another word. Just pulled his phone out of his pocket before he'd even walked back to his truck, and I watched him dial before he'd backed out of the driveway. I already knew exactly who he was calling. Patricia showed up the next afternoon. Marcus was with her. They hadn't called ahead, and I've learned over the years that when those two show up together without warning, it means they've been on the phone comparing notes. Whatever gets said next has already been rehearsed. They came in, sat down in my living room, Marcus on the old recliner that used to be Ruth's favorite spot for him to sprawl out as a boy. Patricia perched on the edge of the couch like she was ready to jump up at any second. I sat across from them in my chair by the window and waited. "Dad," Marcus started, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "We need to talk about the boat." Figured we might. $92,000, Dad. He said it the way you'd say somebody had gotten arrested. It's a fine boat, son. That's exactly the point, Patricia cut in. She had her arms crossed, that same look she used to get when she was 12, and thought she was right about something. Dad, we're worried about you. You're 71. You should be thinking about your future, not throwing money at a boat you're going to use maybe 10 times a year. Throwing money. You know what I mean. I saved for that boat for 9 years, Patricia. Every dollar of it. It's $92,000. I'm aware of the price. I wrote the check myself. Marcus jumped back in before she could go further. Dad, you're living too large for a man your age. You need to be smarter about this. You need to be thinking about what happens down the road. There it was. Same phrase. Living too large. I let it sit in the room a moment, let it settle into the furniture the way smoke does. What happens down the road? I repeated slowly. Meaning what, exactly? Marcus glanced at Patricia, and something passed between them, some silent agreement about who should say the next part. Meaning, Patricia said carefully, if something happens to you, medical bills, a fall, anything, that money needs to be there, not tied up in some boat sitting in a marina. For me, you mean, the money needs to be there for me. For the family, Marcus said, for all of us. What if you need help later, and there's nothing left because you spent it on yourself? For all of us. There it was, laid right out on the coffee table between us like a hand of cards nobody meant to show. I looked at both of them for a long moment. Is that really what you two think this is? That I bought a boat, and now there's nothing left for the family? Neither one answered right away. Patricia looked at her hands. Marcus held my eyes a second longer, then looked away too. We just don't want you making decisions you'll regret, Dad, Patricia said, softer now. But I'd heard the first part clear enough, and so had she. I nodded slowly, looked at the floor, looked back up. Your mother would have told you both to leave an old man be about his own money. Mom's not here to say that, Marcus said, and immediately looked like he regretted it, because that landed harder than he meant it to. Ruth had been gone 6 years, and he knew better than to use her like that. I let it go, kept my voice level, easy, the way I do when a job's gone sideways and hollering at the crew won't fix a single wire. Your mother worked right alongside me for 42 years, and she never once told me I couldn't spend a dollar I earned. But you're both right about one thing. I do need to be more careful. I hear you. Marcus blinked, caught off guard. He'd come in ready for a fight, and I'd handed him nothing to swing at. So, you'll take the boat back? Didn't say that. Said I hear you. Dad. I hear you both, I said again, standing up to signal we were done. I'll be more careful. They left that evening thinking they'd gotten through to me. Patricia hugged me at the door, told me she loved me, said she just worried because she cared. Marcus shook my hand a little too firm, the way he does when he's trying to prove something to himself. They drove off together, and I stood on the porch and watched their tail lights disappear down the ridge road, and I felt something settle into place inside my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more patient than anger. That night, after the house had gone quiet the way it does now that it's just me in it, I went to the little office off the kitchen, the room Ruth used to call my thinking room, because I'd disappear in there for hours when a job wasn't sitting right with me. I sat down at the desk, opened the laptop, pulled up my bank accounts. 37 active recurring payments, some big, some small. All of them going out to 2 people who'd just sat in my living room and told me I was living too large. I started with the smallest one, and then I just kept going. Stay with me here, because what happened over the next 2 months, I promise you, neither one of those kids saw coming. It was the second week of July when things started falling apart for them, and I want to be clear, I didn't send a text, didn't leave a note, didn't call to explain myself. I just sat in my chair every evening with a glass of sweet tea, watched the calendar turn, and let things happen the way they were going to happen. It started with Marcus. Marcus drives a 2023 Ford F-150, the fancy trim with all the bells on it. Lease payment of $680 a month. His name was on the lease. My account number was on the auto draft. Was on it. I was out on the back porch on a Wednesday morning, drinking coffee, reading the paper the old-fashioned way, when my phone started buzzing. Marcus. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Morning, son. Dad. His voice had that tight, controlled sound to it. Did something happen with your bank account? Good morning to you too. Dad, my truck payment got rejected. I got an alert from the finance company saying the auto draft failed. Is there a problem with your account? I took a slow sip of coffee. Hmm? Dad, what does that mean? I've got a late fee already. Well, I said, you might want to look into that. Silence on the other end, the kind that has thoughts running through it, fast and confused. Look into Dad, you pay that. You've always paid that. I know. So what happened? I'm cutting back, Marcus. You told me to, remember? A longer silence this time. Dad, the truck payment? Have a good Wednesday, son. I hung up, picked my paper back up. The birds out in the yard didn't care one way or another. Patricia took a little longer to catch on. She's always been sharper than Marcus about connecting dots, but even she figured his situation was just some kind of bank hiccup, a fluke that would sort itself out. Then her health club membership got canceled. Then her streaming services, all four of them, went dark inside the same weekend. Then the family cell phone plan she'd been on since she was a teenager, the one I'd been paying every month for 11 straight years, started throttling her data down to almost nothing. She called me crying on a Sunday evening. I let it go to voicemail, listened to it after. Her voice was shaking. Dad, my phone won't load anything. My Netflix is just gone, and I got a cancellation email from the gym. Dad, what is going on? Please call me back. I didn't call back that night. I sat in my chair, finished my tea, and thought about the word she'd used in my living room. Family. All of us. I thought about that word a good long while. By the third week of July, both of their phones were essentially useless outside of Wi-Fi. I hadn't canceled the lines. I just logged into the account and paused the data. No warning, no explanation, just a hard drop straight down to nothing. Marcus called 4 times that Thursday. I answered the fourth one. Dad, what is happening? My phone's been buffering all day. I can't even pull up a map for a job site. You should probably look into your own plan then. My own plan? Dad, I've been on your plan since I was 16. I know. I'm cutting back. You told me to. I meant the boat, Dad. I didn't mean... You said 37 payments, Marcus. I let that land in the quiet. You came into my house and told me I had too much going out every month. So I looked into it. Turns out, a lot of it wasn't even mine. Dead silence on the line. I could hear him working it out, piece by piece. How many did you cancel? His voice had changed, the frustration drained clean out of it, something more careful sitting in its place. You have a good evening, son. I hung up. Patricia showed up at my door on a Friday evening, not calling ahead, not the way she does when she's angry, but quiet, the way she does when she's run all the way out of options. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, folded her hands, and looked at me with those eyes that have been reading my face since she was 5 years old. Dad, please. Patricia. As Marcus got a second notice on the truck. If it's not caught up in 10 days, they're going to report it to the credit bureau. And I can't, Dad. I can't cover my rent and my own bills at the same time. Not on what I make. You know that. I do know that. Then that's a problem, Dad. That's exactly the problem, I said. You're 31 years old and you can't cover your own rent. That is the problem, Patricia, not the boat. She looked down at her hands on the table. You know we didn't mean it like that. What exactly did you mean then? Because I've had 2 months to think it over and I keep landing on the same thing. You used the word family. Your brother used the word all of us. You told me to my face I needed to be careful with my own money because I bought myself one boat after 41 years of never buying myself a single thing worth mentioning. She didn't have an answer for that. Her eyes went wet, but she held it together, didn't let it spill. I built every soft landing you two ever had. I told her, and I kept my voice level, kept it steady the way I've kept everything steady since Ruth passed. I did it quiet. Never once asked either one of you to thank me for it. And the one time I did something for myself, you sat in my living room and made me feel like a criminal for it. She was quiet a long moment. I know, she finally said, barely above a whisper. I know that came out wrong. Then let me finish what I started. She looked up at me, and something in her face shifted, some understanding settling in that this wasn't going to be undone with an apology over the kitchen table. She nodded, just barely, stood up, and let herself out. That was the last time either one of them asked me to stop. Now here's where it gets interesting. My nephew Cody, my late brother's boy, runs into Marcus at a barbecue joint out on Tunnel Road one Saturday. They get to talking, and Cody, bless him, has never once in his life been able to keep a piece of information to himself. He lets it slip that he'd heard from his mother, who'd heard it from a woman at church, who'd heard it from Patricia herself in a moment of weakness, that Walter's talking to a lawyer about putting everything into some kind of trust. That's all it took. By Sunday morning, both of them knew. The call started at 7:15. I know because I was already up, already on the porch, already halfway through my first cup. Marcus, Dad, call me back. It's important. Patricia, Dad, I heard something. Can we talk? By 9 o'clock, Marcus had called 3 times. By 10, Patricia was calling around, trying to find out more. By noon, the boat wasn't even the subject anymore. The visit started that same week. Suddenly Marcus had time for Sunday dinner again. Suddenly Patricia was stopping by midweek, just to check on me, she said. They brought things. Marcus brought a bag of coffee from that roaster downtown I'd mentioned, liking exactly once, months back. Patricia showed up with a peach cobbler from a bakery I'd never once told her I liked, which told me somebody else had told her. I accepted all of it graciously, said thank you, sat with them, let them talk. I did not bring up the trust. I did not bring up the payments or the folder I'd started keeping in my desk drawer. I just let them visit, let them be warm and attentive, and suddenly deeply curious about how their old man was holding up. And I watched every second of it. Funny thing, how the mention of inheritance improves a person's whole calendar. If any of you have been sitting with a story like this yourselves, go on and drop it down in the comments. I'd like to hear it. And hit that like button while you're at it. They thought the canceled payments were the whole punishment. They thought the rumor of a trust was as far as this went. They had no idea I hadn't even gotten to the part where I sat them both down properly. That part was still coming, and I'd been waiting the better part of a decade to say what needed saying. Some men get even by raising their voice. I got even by getting organized. It was a Sunday in early September when I called them, and I picked that day on purpose. Sunday. Nobody's got work to hide behind. Nobody's got a meeting to cut things short. Sunday means you sit down and you deal with what's in front of you. I called them both the night before, kept it simple. Come by for supper tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Don't be late. Marcus asked if everything was all right. I told him everything was fine, 2 o'clock, and hung up. They pulled into the driveway together at 1:56, Marcus's truck, which I noticed he'd managed to get current on somehow, probably borrowed from a buddy. They sat in the cab a good 2 minutes before either one got out, and I knew exactly what that meant. They were getting their story straight, deciding who'd say what. I had a big pot of my chicken and dumplings going, the recipe Ruth left me written in her own hand, and the house smelled like every Sunday we'd ever had in it. We ate first. I insisted on it. Patricia tried twice to steer things toward the trust before the plates were even cleared, and I redirected her both times. Asked Marcus about work, asked her about the new apartment, let them get comfortable, let them believe maybe this really was just supper. When we finished, I stood up. Let's go sit in the front room. I let them settle, Marcus on the couch, Patricia in the armchair that used to be Ruth's. I went back to my office and came out with a folder, sat down across from them, and set it on the coffee table without opening it yet. I want to talk about what you two said to me back in June. Marcus shifted in his seat. Dad, about that. The payments and everything, we didn't realize. I know you didn't. And that's on me, honestly. I never once sat you down and showed you the full picture. I'm correcting that today. I opened the folder. This here is a spreadsheet. 37 line items, going back 17 years. I turned it around, slid it across the table. Take a look at the first page. They both leaned in. Marcus picked it up, and I watched his eyes track down the page, watched them slow, watched the color drain right out of his face. First column's the payment. Second is the monthly amount. Third is how many months running. Fourth, I tapped the table once, is the total. Patricia was reading over his shoulder now, and her hand came up slow and covered her mouth. Neither one said a word. I let the numbers do the talking. Numbers don't get defensive. Numbers just sit there and tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. Marcus turned the page. Then the next one. 17 years of truck payments and rent supplements and phone bills and gym memberships and streaming accounts and a semester of community college tuition and 2 security deposits and a set of dentures for Patricia's ex-husband that I'd apparently covered without even remembering it. And 80. Some other things that had flowed out of my account and into their lives, so quiet and steady, they'd never once had to think about where it came from. He got to the last page, the total line, and just stared at it. Dad. His voice came out strange, flattened. This is over $800,000. Give or take, I said, the way you'd read off a weather report, over 17 years. The room went quiet, not an awkward quiet, not an angry one, a reckoning kind of quiet. Patricia's eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying yet. She was hovering right at that edge where everything feels fragile and one wrong breath could tip it over. Marcus set the papers down slow, like they'd gotten delicate on him all of a sudden. I never knew, he said quietly. I know you didn't. That's the whole point. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, looked at both of them straight on. You came into my house in June and told me I was living too large. Told me I needed to think about the future. Told me, without saying it plain, that I'd be leaving nothing behind. I paused. I want to ask you something, and I need you to actually think on it before you answer. Which part of that $800,000 was living too large? Nobody said anything. Good. There isn't an answer. I shook my head slowly. I bought one boat. One. In 41 years of working with my hands. $92,000. And you two sat right there and made me feel like I'd done something shameful. I sat there and smiled and told you I heard you. And then I went to my office that night and thought about every single line on that sheet. And I thought to myself, if they think 92,000 for their father is too large, let's find out what they think about 800,000 for themselves. Marcus opened his mouth. I held up a hand. I'm not finished. He closed it. I'm not telling you this to punish you. I'm not holding it over you. I'm telling you because I love you both. And I think I did you a disservice by making your lives so comfortable you never had to learn what comfort actually costs somebody. I sat back, reached into the folder, and pulled out a second document, shorter, cleaner, the one my attorney had drawn up 3 weeks prior. I had this office restructure my estate into a trust. The money's still there for you both. But it's protected now. It doesn't just land in your hands because you're my children. Marcus, the trustee won't release $1 to you until you've held one job, steady, for 2 full years running. Patricia, you'll need to cover your own rent independently for 18 straight months before you see a cent. Patricia's head came up sharp. Dad, I can't on what I make. I barely. I know, and that's not me being cruel to you. That's me telling you something's wrong with that math, and the answer was never supposed to be my checkbook. Her chin started trembling. The tears came finally, one at a time, quiet. Marcus was still staring at the trust document, jaw working. And the payments? He said. The 37. They're just gone? Already canceled. Everyone. Permanently? Permanently. My truck payment has been your responsibility for 2 months now. You figured that part out already, didn't you? He held my eyes a second, then looked away first. Yeah, he said quietly. I did. Then you already know you can carry it. The room sat quiet a while. Neither one of them said anything for a long stretch, and I let it stretch. Didn't fill the silence just to make it comfortable. I'm not your enemy, I finally said. I'm your father. And I intend to be your father for whatever years I've got left. And I plan on spending some of those years out on that boat. And I won't be apologizing to either one of you about it ever again. I let that settle. But I'm done being the bank. That chapter's closed. Patricia wiped her face with the back of her hand. Dad, I'm sorry. I really am. She gestured at the trust papers. But this can't be permanent, right? You're making a point. We hear you. We get it. I looked her dead in the eye. It's permanent, Patricia. The temperature in the room changed just like that. Permanent, Marcus repeated, like the word had come to him in a foreign language. He picked the trust document back up, Read it over again, set it down harder than before. You're telling me you canceled everything, you set up conditions like we're applying for a loan, and this is just how it is now. That's correct, because you told me to my face I was living too large, spending money that belonged to the family. Marcus stood up, not slow, not calm, the way a man stands when something inside him won't stay seated any longer. That is not what we said. Marcus, Patricia started. No, I have to hold a job for 2 years, Dad. I have a job. I've had a job for 6 years. What is that supposed to even prove? It means you carry it without a net under you. Without, he laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it, the kind of laugh a man makes when he's too angry to find real words. So you just decide this. Go to a lawyer behind our backs, cancel 37 payments, sit us down for supper and hand us paperwork like we're employees getting reviewed? Lower your voice in my house, son. I'm not lowering anything. He pressed both hands to the top of his head. You understand what these 2 months have been? My truck got repossessed. Threats, Dad. I had to borrow $400 off a guy I work with because I didn't understand what was happening to money I've counted on my whole adult life. Money that was never supposed to just disappear on me. Money that was never yours to count on, I said, quiet and even. It was mine. It always was. Dead silence, flat and heavy. Then Patricia stood up too, and that's when I really saw it, saw the shift happen right there in her face. The tears dried up. Whatever came up underneath was harder. You know what, Dad? Fine. She grabbed her purse off the couch arm. You want to play it like we're strangers you owe nothing to? Fine. But don't sit there acting like you did this for our own good. You didn't do this to teach us some lesson. You did this because we hurt your pride over a boat. Patricia, an $85,000 boat. 92, I corrected, and watched that land wrong. We were worried about you, she snapped. You were worried about what you were going to inherit. She flinched, actually flinched, because it landed true, and she knew it, and knowing it made her angrier than anything else I could have said. We're leaving. She looked at her brother. Marcus, let's go. He was still standing there, still looking right at me, something moving behind his eyes I couldn't quite read. Anger, sure, but something younger underneath it too, something that didn't want to walk out that door. But Patricia was already moving toward it, and Marcus has followed his sister his whole life. He picked his keys up off the side table, didn't look at me again until he was almost through the doorway. Hope the boat was worth it, Dad. He walked out. The door didn't slam. I sat there, a long moment, listening to the truck back out of the driveway, listening to the road go quiet again, and I thought to myself, a slam is a feeling. A door pulled shut soft and careful behind you. That's a decision. I sat in that front room a good while by myself after they left. The dumplings had gone cold on the stove. The house had that particular kind of quiet a house gets when it used to be full and now it isn't. The kind of quiet I'd gotten used to since Ruth passed and thought I'd made peace with, until tonight reminded me there's more than one way to end up alone in a house you built with your own hands. I got up eventually, walked out to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of tea I didn't much want, and sat at the table where Patricia had cried 2 months before. I thought about Ruth. I thought about what she would have said, sitting across from me right now. She'd have told me I did right by them, even while it hurt her to watch it happen. She always did have more backbone about the kids than folks gave her credit for. I thought about the folder, still sitting open on the coffee table in the other room. 37 lines of quiet generosity nobody ever had to ask twice for. I thought about the boat sitting down at that marina, paid for outright, waiting on me. And I thought about the 2 grown children who'd just walked out of my house angrier at being told the truth than they'd ever been at anything I'd actually done wrong. I sat there a long while, and somewhere in that quiet, something in me settled that hadn't settled in a long time. Not happiness, exactly. Something steadier than that. The kind of peace that comes from finally putting a thing down you'd been carrying so long you forgot it had weight. They didn't come back around for 3 weeks. When Marcus finally did call, it wasn't to apologize, not outright. It was just a short conversation about nothing much. The weather, a job he'd picked up, careful and thin around the edges, like he was testing whether the ground would hold his weight. I let him test it, talked to him plain, same as I always had, Didn't bring up the trust, didn't bring up the boat. Patricia took longer. Almost 2 months before she showed up on my porch one evening, sat down in the chair beside mine without asking, and didn't say a whole lot at first. We just sat there watching the light go down over the ridge the way Ruth and I used to. I got my own place squared away, she finally said. Paid the rent myself this month, all of it. That's so. It wasn't easy. Wasn't meant to be. She was quiet a minute. I think I understand now what you were trying to show us. I didn't say anything to that. Didn't need to. Just reached over and set my hand on top of hers for a moment, and she let me, and that some things don't need a speech. Some things just need time, and a father patient enough to let it work itself out the way it's supposed to. I still take that boat out most Saturdays, the weather allows. Sit out there on the water by myself sometimes with a buddy from the old crew, and I don't think twice about what it cost me anymore. 41 years of building a soft landing for everybody but myself. And it took losing my children's good opinion of me, for a little while at least, to finally understand that the softest landing I ever needed to build was one for myself. It only took 71 years to figure that out. Better late, I suppose, than never at all. If this story found you somewhere in your own life, drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I've got more of these to tell you, and I suspect you'll want to hear them.